Welcome back. Welcome back. This is The Real Down. This is your host, Sam Jones, and I've got a pretty awesome announcement to make. Well, we already made the announcement, but I want to welcome my new co-host, Mr. Dan Perry, to the show. How we doing,
What
Dan?
up, what up? Doing good, living the dream.
Awesome,
Ready to
man.
talking about some kayak fishing.
Hell to the yeah. Well, I'm excited to have you on, my friend. Sad to see Brad go, but he's moving on to do another segment, and I know he's excited about that, and he's going to bring a lot of value to that segment. But I'm also excited about having you on. Me and Brad were in a very similar geographic area, and now we got you coming in and bringing in the southern flair to
That's
the
right.
show. So I'm excited about that. I think that's going to be cool. But yeah, first episode, man. This should be good.
Yeah, I think just listening to all the northern stuff, there's a lot to be learned, and I do some regional stuff, but I usually don't make it up to the north too much. So it's really interesting for me to hear all that, and hopefully I can bring some insight from down here to help guys who are going to fish down here or just people who live down here now.
Yeah, well, I think even the techniques that you guys use,
Yeah.
are beneficial to guys all over. Same thing here. So, I remember when I went
Yeah,
out west, I learned a lot out there, and
definitely.
it was fun, and I got to bring a lot of that stuff out here.
Sounds good.
Uh, all right. Well, without further ado, we've got a special guest tonight. We're stepping away from the tournament recaps this week. It's a slow week in the tournament scene, and we're gonna talk about tournament series and clubs. And our guest tonight is a tournament director, our first tournament director. We're going to continue to do that throughout the off season here. So excited to have a conversation with Mr. Jason Young of Indiana Kayak Anglers. How we doing, Jason?
All right, man.
Welcome,
Hey, thanks
welcome.
for having me. Thanks for having me. This is awesome what you guys are doing with this Paddle and Fin podcast and the different series within the podcast stream that you guys are doing, and this is really cool. Good for kayak fishing, good for kayak fishing clubs, good for kayak fishing anglers. I've just really been enjoying it.
Yeah, man, it's definitely a cool platform that we have here, and the different segments are always fun to listen and be a part of. So, hopefully we're bringing some value to some people, and tonight we're going to get a in-depth look at what it is to be a tournament director and kind of promote your tournament trail.
Well, I'll do my best to answer the questions as good as I can.
Awesome. All right. Well, first and foremost, let's talk a little bit about Indiana Kayak Anglers, and what you guys are doing here in Indiana. So, you want to just give us kind of a brief rundown of what the series is, because it's not a club; it's a series here in Indiana.
Right. Yeah, we don't charge any membership fees or anything. We keep it open. You know, mostly just through trying to get new people into the sport. It makes it easier if they don't have to pay a membership fee and feel like they have to participate in all the events. Come out, try one out, and see how it goes from there for you. So we do just run a series. We've done 4 events for the past several years. We're going to do 5 events in 2020, just because everybody's been asking for more.
They can't get enough.
I guess. If you're a kayak angler in Indiana and you want to do anything competitive, there's plenty of opportunity, not just with Indiana Kayak Anglers, but with the other kayak fishing organizations in Indiana. I actually sat down today and tried to put a calendar together with all of the events and for all of the clubs, and it quickly grew out of control. There's a lot going on in Indiana this year. I think there's 51 events on that calendar.
Wow.
Which is just insane.
So, and we could go down the wormhole with this one, but we'll keep it brief. Do you think we're getting to a point where there's too much?
In Indiana, I think we're still good because all of the major clubs that are involved, of course, that's Indiana Kayak Anglers. There's Southern Indiana Yak Anglers Club, known as SIAC. There's Grassroots Bass Yakin, which was new for 2019. And then there's Kayak Anglers of Southern Indiana. And all of the clubs within Indiana, actually, we all get along really well. And a lot of the anglers fish multiple clubs. There's no fighting. We all work together as much as we can on our schedule, so there's not a ton of overlap. And everybody just enjoys fishing everyone's clubs. The tournament directors for the other clubs fish the Indiana Kayak Anglers events, and I've done my best to fish other events as schedule and time permits. We just all enjoy it. We all provide maybe something a little different to each of the anglers that might benefit them in some way, so that everyone can have a good time with kayak fishing. We're all working together to help grow the sport, for sure.
It's surprising for me that there's so many in a place like Indiana. I think being from Alabama, bass boat side, whenever I fished that down here, I could fish something every single weekend, multiple tournaments a week. But kayak stuff, we just don't have nearly as many as y'all do. So I hope some of that makes it down here too. But that's awesome. Y'all have so much to do. I'm sure your wives hate it, but I'm sure it's a lot of fun.
Well, it's business, right? I can. Oh, honey, I gotta go fish this event.
That's right.
Yeah, I can attest to that. You guys definitely do an awesome job of working together, and the communication, I think, has been key there. But when you sit down, because I've done the same thing. I broke down all the schedules this year. When you sit down and take a look at it, it's obvious that you guys were communicating, because there is very little overlap with the local stuff.
Yeah, one of the things that helped. So I'm just one of the members of the board of directors for Indiana Kayak Anglers, and I have Jim Orr, which I'm sure anybody that's paid any attention to kayak fishing in the last 2 years knows who Jim Orr is, and we're definitely blessed to have him helping out with the Indiana Kayak Anglers. And then also have Matt Gibson. So the three of us together, we work really well together, and we were able to sit down and get a schedule together real early this year. This is by far the earliest we've ever released a schedule, and I think that helped drive everything else. And so 2020 just looks amazing for Indiana kayak fishing. Dan, hopefully you can come up and join us for at least one of these events.
I might have to.
Whether it's one of ours or one of the other clubs, come up and enjoy some Indiana fishing, man.
It's only 7 hours away. It's not too far.
Hop, skip, and a jump, baby.
That's right. Get that Tacoma rolling.
We're all coming down there for the NC, so
Right.
you
I got
get
one.
your ride back.
Sam and 900 of his best friends.
Right. Yeah, it's funny too. I've heard a lot of people say it seems like a lot of people are going to focus more on their local stuff, the in-state kind of things, and maybe fish. It seems like with so many more in state that people are kind of planning to fish that more local stuff.
Well, I think Sam can probably attest to this a little bit, because I know he did a lot of trail and pro stuff this year, and there's probably a huge wallet and financial aspect in that decision.
For sure.
Yeah, I am one of those people who are looking more local this coming season. I mean, gosh, I mean, when you go into it, you kind of know, right? I mean, you're thinking about the money and the time, but it's not until you're actually doing it and living it that you realize how much you're investing. And I unfortunately didn't cash a bunch of checks this year, so you definitely, you're dipping into the savings accounts to do these things. And if you're not cashing checks, it's hard to continue it. I will fish nationally and regionally next year, but I'm one of those people. I'm really looking at the local stuff. I think the local trails are doing a really great job. I think they're growing. The schedules are amazing this year in Indiana, so it's going to be hard not to want to fish those things. But yeah, I can understand it. There's definitely a lot that goes into traveling like that, and I enjoy it. Gosh, I enjoy it too much, to be honest. But yeah. So, all right, enough about me. Jason, let's talk, because I want to get into the 2020 schedule, because we keep mentioning it, but we haven't, announced what it is. But before we do that, I mean, 2019 was a killer year for IKA. I mean, some really cool stuff went down in 2019. So let's get into that a little bit. Let's do a little recap, do some shout outs here, and talk about 2019. So let's start with 4 events. Where were those?
So we opened up the season on Summit Lake, which is a state park in Reservoir, East Central Indiana, Newcastle, Indiana area. Beautiful lake, beautiful fishery. It's one of those that a lot of guys have asked for over the years, and we always sort of hesitated to do anything on a state park lake because of all of the permitting process and everything that's involved with that. But we sucked it up and did it this year, and as our season opener, we had 84 anglers show up to that one.
Wow.
Which just, it blew me away. The guys at Summit Lake, that run the park and the facility, they were amazed that now this is a lake. One of the things you have to keep in mind is in Central Indiana, there's not a whole lot of places to fish, as far as being able to host a tournament. We have a couple reservoirs around Indianapolis that get hammered. Summit Lake is another one of those that it just gets hammered through the year because there's not a lot of opportunity around here. But they were even surprised to see, 84 little plastic boats going around the water, and we had a wonderful day. Good numbers, good turnout. It was an incredible season opener and really set the stage for what we saw for the rest of 2019.
Awesome. And then, you had another big event. So IK, I think if it's known for anything, it's known for the White River.
Absolutely. Event. That's every year, that's our biggest event. Every year.
And this year was even bigger because of the Hobie Bass Open Series, bringing out the satellite events. And you were fortunate enough to pair up with them and bring a Hobie event to Indiana. And my goodness, I mean,
it was
talk about
it was
turnout.
Crazy. It was crazy. So part of the reason that came about is because AJ McWhorter used to actually be the Hobie rep in Indiana and the surrounding states. Prior, I'm not sure what region he does now, if he's still doing that. But so he's actually been on the White River because he came to visit our local dealer one time, and Nathan Pickering and AJ and a few other guys actually went out on the White River, and AJ got to enjoy the lovely smallmouth that we have in that river. And that's sort of how that came about. He actually reached out to Nathan when Nathan was still on the board of directors for Indiana Kayak Anglers and said, hey, we're doing these satellite events. We're trying to get a list together of venues that we could host these at, and I'd really like to put White River on the map, or on the possibility list. And lo and behold, everything came through, and they chose that event for the satellite event, and that put Indiana Kayak Anglers in position to kind of run the local side of things, right? And we ran it in tandem with our event on the White River, and everything was just wonderful. We just had a great time. The turnout was unbelievable. I wish we would have been able to get more guys to fish the satellite side of things. We only had 35 guys sign up for that, but it did give us a little bit of draw from other states. We had anglers come down from Michigan, anglers from Illinois, Tennessee, Kentucky, that came into town to fish that event. And I think they enjoyed it and had a good time. I believe everybody had a good time, but we actually had 92 on the Indiana Kayak Anglers side of the event. And so just absolutely insane. And I know Cole Garland, who won the satellite event, he'll be down at the Tournament of Champions next weekend, and he had a heck of a payday. he won the Indiana Kayak Anglers event. He won the satellite event, and then I believe he also had Big Bass.
Yep.
So
are these normal turnouts, 84 and 92? I mean, that's kind of blowing me away. How many?
So I wouldn't call it normal. I think our previous record was 82, also for a season opener. That is sort of the trend you see in a lot of local trails, right? Like everybody's itching to get out, and so your season opener is usually one of your bigger events. Now the White River event was actually our last regular season event of the year. We always put that one in late summer, mostly for safety reasons, right? Late summer, your rivers are going to recover from heavy rains a little quicker, and generally the water is going to be a little safer. You've got a better chance of the water being safer for a river event. So the 84 and the 92 were definitely high. Our other two events last year had 56 and 57. So we averaged 72 across all four regular season events. So
that's still a great turnout. Yeah.
We are pleased as punch at that. You'll never hear us complain about that one at all. And big shout out to Turney X and Dwayne Wally, because there's no darn way we could manage those events without Turney X. There's just no way.
Yeah. I mean, you see smaller turnouts than your lowest turnout at KBF.
Yeah.
Regional events. I mean, 84 and 92 is amazing. And I think that kind of tells the story about what's kind of going on here in Indiana. And that question I asked you earlier, do we maybe have too many options in Indiana, too many trails? No, we got a crap ton of anglers who are starving for these tournaments and asking for more.
Yep. And just to show just a little anecdote about the growth of the sport of kayak fishing in Indiana. So I grew up in Northeast Indiana, and Dan, if you don't know, Northeast Indiana, there's just a blue million natural lakes up there. Where I grew up, my dad and I were going to go fishing on a Saturday morning. The hardest decision we had for the day was which one of the 60 lakes that's a 30-minute drive from our house do we want to go fish. I mean, there's just a ton of lakes up there. And so my folks still live up there, and my dad is retired now, and he spends 4 to 5 days a week on the water fishing. And he says he couldn't tell you the last time he went fishing on any one of those lakes up there where he didn't see somebody kayak fishing. And it has just become a steady increase in the visibility of kayak fishing while he's on the water, just some guy in a boat, you know what I mean? And so I think that's a testament to the growth of the sport in Indiana. And granted, not everybody wants to fish a tournament, but a lot of people do. It's pretty obvious.
Awesome. So let's give some shout outs. We finished out at the White River there. Then you go into the championship, crown a champion and an angler of the year. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So Aiden Darlington pretty well dominated our series this year. And this is actually the third year in the row that he's been our angler of the year.
Wow.
Pretty insane domination. I actually don't have the statistics in front of me, but I think he cashed a paycheck in every event. So, it was pretty well dominated. Now our series champion from the actual championship event was Jackson Orr. Again, if you don't know the name, you haven't been paying attention.
I might have heard that name before.
Yeah, you may have.
Once or twice.
What was absolutely unbelievable about that tournament is we actually had 2 lakes in play, 2 smaller lakes. It's one nice thing about our championship event. We only got 16 guys, so we can choose smaller bodies of water. But in this case, we actually had 2 bodies of water that launches were just a few minutes away from each other. And Jackson actually changed lakes with an hour to go in the tournament. And in that last hour, he upgraded 3 times. And the best part was his biggest fish of the day and his final upgrade. He took that photo the timestamp when he submitted his Attorney X, the timestamp was 1 second before lines out.
Wow.
So he caught his biggest fish of the day, got it on the board, and took the picture with 1 second left. Absolutely.
Talk about fishing every second. Yeah.
Not quitting, that's for sure. And that fish was what he needed actually to push him into first place.
Yeah,
so
that was unreal. I remember talking to him about that. Yeah, that's crazy. So yeah, shout out to those guys. Aiden taking the third AOY in a row.
And you know, I think in some local trails you might brush that one off a little bit, but we have some serious sticks that fish with us. We have a lot. Well, look at Jackson, right? We've actually got a lot of younger guys that fish with us that I would put up against about anyone. And maybe that's a good segue into Crossroads. So our Crossroads Classic tournament this year was Aiden, Jackson, Nick Matthews, Aaron Wilson, and Josh Robbins. And those 5 guys just absolutely fished lights out. Had an incredible tournament. So they finished day 1. They were in 4th place as a team. And when I say team, I know there were some other clubs that maybe didn't have a whole lot of cohesiveness amongst each of the anglers that were fishing, but these guys fished like a team. Day 2, they went out, and every single one of those guys fished better on day 2 than they did on day 1. And other than a few of the guys who didn't have a limit on day 1, I'm pretty sure they were the only 5 guys that did that. And so through communication with each other on the water, helping each other out, they were able to go out and just fish lights out on day 2. We did have an unfortunate incident on day 2. And one of our anglers who actually had 87 inches on the board accidentally went out of bounds. So on Newton Lake, there were some out of bounds areas, and he went out of bounds just, you know, he was basically trying to upgrade in that last couple hours and just, you know, wasn't paying attention, whatever, but he fished out of bounds, which is a disqualification. And so we had one score on our team of 5 that was actually a 0 instead of an 87, and still finished in 3rd place as a team. So, but the best part about all of that, going back to the whole team thing and a testament to the anglers that fish with Indiana Kayak Anglers, and the entirety of the success of this organization, is that all of those guys supported each other. Nobody got down on the angler that got disqualified. They all had his back 110%. Like I told him, I was like, man, these guys will go out fishing with you tomorrow if you ask him. You know what I mean? Nobody was mad at him. Things happened. They understood that, had his back. I couldn't have been more, as a tournament director. I was actually there on day 2, and as a tournament director, you know, Indiana Kayak Anglers is kind of my baby, and at that point, I was super proud of my kids.
Yeah,
right. I really was, and it was awesome.
Very cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, they definitely impressed me out there. I knew they were going to do well, and they didn't disappoint. And I'm looking for them to claim the trophy next year.
That's the goal.
And, hey, if I stick around and am able to fish some local stuff, you know, maybe I'll make a play for that team. We never know. So I unfortunately didn't get to fish any IKA events last year. I was going to fish the White River, and work screwed me out of that one. So thanks, work. But you know,
shout out, work.
Yep. Thanks, work. Appreciate you. But all right. So moving on. Because we got a few other topics to cover here tonight. This is going to be a jam-packed show for sure. So you know, we got a recap of 2019, and as we were talking about before, guys are begging for more. So this year you're doing 5 regular season.
That's correct.
And a championship, giving them an extra tournament covering another month Let's go. Let's do a quick little rundown of the schedule this year.
All right, 2020, we're going to open on April 25th on Lake Wawasee / Lake Syracuse, or Syracuse Lake. I'm not real sure the order on that one. But so Wawasee is a super popular tournament destination in northern Indiana, northern-ish Indiana. It's in Kosciuszko County. Beautiful lake, lots of good fish in that lake. We've avoided this lake for several years despite some demand, mostly because I've spent plenty of time on that lake in a bass boat, and there's times of the year I wasn't even comfortable in a bass boat out there. It gets an insane amount of traffic, not just from fishermen, but from pleasure boaters, and I think they have a sailboat race there every weekend too. It's crazy. It gets nuts. But that's why we're
damn sailboats. Just
get out of my wind.
Those seamen. Sorry. Go.
Yeah, but we decided to go ahead and put it on the schedule this year, and we're going early, so we should avoid a lot of that traffic. Wawasee is a pretty large lake. It's 3,000 acres. Syracuse is attached to it via a channel. It's 400 acres. Both lakes produce fish, nice fish. There's smallmouth in the lakes. I've seen some pretty big smallmouth come out of those lakes. And it also sets up kind of nice for kayak fishing because there's actually 2 boat ramps. And if you look at them on a map, they're basically polar opposite of each other, right? So one of the public launches is on Syracuse, and the other public launch is clear on the other end of Wawasee. So I think that sets up pretty well for a kayak tournament too, especially on a body of water of 3,000 acres. So
absolutely.
Event 2, we're heading May 30th to Salamone. Salamone is a reservoir in north central Indiana. It's roughly 2,600 acres. Also an interesting body of water. It's the Salamone River dammed up, so it's a reservoir with a lot of fingers and stuff. But the way that sets up, it's mostly surrounded by various state parks and fish and wildlife areas and stuff that I don't believe there's any actual residential development on the lake. But because of the way it's set up, there's actually 10 different launches on that lake.
Wow.
That guys will be able to use. So definitely everybody should be spread out for that one. We're hoping to kind of turn this event into a little bit of a social event too. There's a lot of options for camping and stuff. So we're still throwing around ideas and trying to get the planning done on that one, but we're hoping to kind of make this a little more of a family destination tournament type thing. So plenty to do there.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
idea.
Dan.
Yeah.
I've been in Indiana most of my life and fishing in Indiana for a long time. I've never heard of this lake, so I'm interested in this one.
It's again one of those central Indiana doesn't have a whole lot of water type things, and this kind of, if you look at it on a map, it sort of kind of falls in between the central Indiana and the northern Indiana type of location, which is part of the reason why we chose it too. Try and stay central without being central.
Mm-hmm,
you know what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So
our
stop number 3.
Stop number 3, June 27th on Geist Reservoir. So Geist is one of those gets hammered a lot, popular big bass destinations in central Indiana. Had kind of a rough year this year from what I've been able to gather. They went a little crazy on spraying the weeds, and that lake, that's your main structure for holding fish is that vegetation. So you start killing it, and they're going to stack up wherever you can find them. But it's about just shy of 2,000 acres there. It's just northeast of Indianapolis. We've had plenty of events at Geist in the past. We've had 2 or 3, I think. We skipped it this year, but we're going to go back next year. It's always a fun tournament. So that one has 3 launch locations. There's a public park up the creek actually where you can launch for free, and then the Geist Marina actually runs 2 other public launches. So there will be fees for those 2 launches, but we're working with them now to kind of keep those fees under control. It's a little crazy. So that actually wraps up our lake series. So those 3 events are lakes, and then we're going to finish up the season, the regular season anyways, with our 2 river events. And these are actually the same 2 river events we fished in 2019. Of course, we have to have the White River event, but last year we went to the Tippecanoe River for the first time, and it was well regarded. Fishing was pretty good. The river set up well again for kayak fishing, kayak tournaments at least, and so we're gonna go back. So we're going to use the same launches as we did in 2019. There's actually 2 lakes along that stretch of the Tippecanoe River, but we want this to be a moving water event, and so the lakes will be off limits unless we need to use them for safety reasons. But
very cool.
2019 we have 57 anglers on that one. It took 86 3/4 inches to win, and Big Bass was a 21-inch smallmouth from Jackson Ore.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a beast.
Nice.
That's on. I don't know. Did I say what date that was? I don't think.
I don't
did.
think so. Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
you listed the dates for either White River or the.
Yeah. So July 25th is the first of our river events on the Tippecanoe, and then August 8th will be our final regular season event, and the perennial favorite of the White River. Yeah.
Nice.
We'll do. Yeah. Go ahead.
And then where are we wrapping it up at for the championship?
Championship right now will be on Palestine. So
nice. Okay.
It's not a very big lake. It's in northern Indiana. It's only 290 acres. But again, since it's a championship and it'll be a limited number of anglers, we can go to the smaller bodies of water. And Palestine definitely has a history of big fish. So
yes, it does.
Yes, sir.
It does.
So
wow. All right. Sweetness. That's a pretty sweet schedule. I'm not gonna lie.
We're pretty excited about it.
You did well. So, the only other question I have about the 2020 schedule, and then we'll move on, is, this year Hobie's not doing the satellite event, so we're not going to have that in conjunction. Any plans to kind of pull in some of those out-of-staters back to that event and kind of, make that a really big event, or just kind of
you specifically the White River event again?
Correct.
We haven't discussed a whole lot of the marketing that we're going to go through next year. Kind of giving ourselves a break after sitting down doing the schedule, and then, like I said, Jim's heading to Ouachita this week, and I'm trying to find all my cold weather gear so I can fish the turkey bowl.
Yeah, I hear you. I just dug out some of mine too. So
we're hoping that a lot of that at least some of the anglers that fished with us from out of state last year for that White River event will, some word of mouth will help, and maybe they'll want to come back and bring some of their buddies with them, and all we can do is best we can. We feel like Indiana Kayak Anglers has worked really hard over the years to create a good reputation for ourselves and our anglers that fish with us. So hopefully we can keep that up, and hopefully that will help with some of the draw. And then we'll look into some other marketing aspects and avenues that we could use to draw.
So let's talk about that reputation a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think that is what you guys are known for, is hosting really great events and taking care of your anglers. So, me and Dan and a lot of the listeners here are anglers, and we probably have a few tournament directors listening too, but I would like to hear from the tournament director standpoint, what you feel makes a good local series, and what kind of considerations you take going into that, because there's a lot of conversation within the kayak fishing community right now about that with the national and regional level stuff. So it's going to be kind of interesting, I think, to hear from you on the local level, those considerations you take, and why you feel like you guys have been so successful at building this reputation.
it's definitely multifaceted, right? So I think part of the reason that we've been so successful is that we were here early on, right? And then, it's gonna sound cliche, but honestly, it really is the anglers that fish with us. I think a lot of the clubs and organizations and different things that have issues, really comes down to just a community that doesn't police itself very well. And I think the fact that we got in early, um, and have been able to just kind of allow the community to build itself, then the community starts to police itself a little bit, right? So if you've got anglers that could be troublemakers, or they just or could be problems, right? They don't feel comfortable because they're the minority, and so they kind of see their way out. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, for sure.
Like I don't think it's anything that we're necessarily doing right. It's just we're trying not to do anything wrong, and really lift up the people that are good people in this community, and let them sort of, shine the light of what we expect out of people that fish our tournaments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you do a really great job of putting that spotlight on those anglers, after the events, and making sure you're giving them proper shout outs and doing the go lives. And so I think that's really cool. Talk a little bit about the dynamic. You got 3 tournament directors there at IKA. Do you think that plays a part in it, having all those voices that can really kind of cipher through everything and put together, a really awesome tournament series?
So the current board with Jim, Matt, and I, we work really well together. We can bounce ideas off of each other. We build on each other's ideas, and then we all agree at the end, well, yeah, that's the way we need to do it. They actually helped talk me out of something I had been stingy about for years, to help streamline the day-to-day the tournament day processes, for our events in 2019, and it was an absolute blessing. And that, that helped a lot, and that took them talking me into it, but it was never a fight. We work well together. We've just always had a strong board. We've had some board members in the past that are no longer part of Indiana Kayak Anglers, but have been absolutely essential in what Indiana Kayak Anglers is now, right? With Nathan Pickering, Nathan is really the one who started this whole thing. He started one club, Central Indiana Kayak Anglers, and that just grew into Indiana Kayak Anglers. And we have Mike Dentzel and Jameson Olson and Joe Armstrong. All those guys have had a voice in what we are now and have been part of it.
Awesome.
For sure.
For with your tournament, with your series being ran so well and your growing membership, you've got to be doing something right. Is there something that you would tell the other tournament directors, maybe a word of advice that you've seen that maybe they should be doing that maybe they're not? Not to call anybody out, just
no.
Kind of best practice.
So I think one of the other things that we do really, really well, and I think the White River event this year. Sorry, guys. Is my furnace causing a lot of background noise?
A little bit, but it's all right.
Yeah. I'll try and shield it a little bit.
Don't be cold.
Well, I'm out in the garage. Sorry.
Did you know you could help support the podcast by going to patreon.com/paddle, the letter N, and Finn? You could also do so by going to anchor.fm/paddle, the letter N, and Finn.
All right, guys, welcome back. We just finished up with Jason from Indiana Kayak Anglers. That was pretty awesome, Dan. It was really cool for me to sit there and talk to a tournament director. It's the first time I've ever really sat down and talked to a tournament director like that. And I think it's definitely a cool thing for our listeners as well.
I think just sitting there, just listening to them, how they're making decisions, it was just all real thoughtful, and you can definitely tell why more people are fishing their series every year, and why it's ran so well, and why people would want to fish it. Because if you have three people like that managing it, that they're definitely doing the right thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Setting the bar for sure. Well, this week we didn't really recap any tournaments. Next week we will have a short recap because this weekend we got a couple events coming up. So the first one, Paddle and Fin sponsoring this event. We've been talking a lot about it, the Turkey Bowl. And for those of you that aren't aware of what that is by now, I'll go over it real quick. That's going to be held on Geist Reservoir here in Indiana. That's ran by my group that I founded and co-founded with Alan Reed called Use Your Kayak Bass. And we're not a tournament organization or anything like that. We're just a group that is here to kind of the goal is to bring all of the anglers in Indiana, all the tournament directors in Indiana and trails and clubs together so that we can promote each other and just make the sport better here in Indiana. And then we're also going to be hosting a food drive, so it's going to be a charity event as well. So that's a 3-man team tournament. As I stated earlier when we were talking to Jason, we're expecting around 75 anglers. So it's going to be pretty cool. We got about 20 teams signed up right now, just short or just over there. So really excited about it. It's going to be best 3 bass, 3-man teams. Should be a good one. So we'll be finally talking about the results of that on the next episode.
Somebody please beat the Trash Panda team from the paddling thing. The other Paddle and Fin host. Somebody please.
Yeah, they don't got a chance, man. That ain't happening. They originally tried to call themselves the Champs.
Oh, Lord.
Isn't that ridiculous? And then they didn't even fish last year, and they're trying to claim the Champs. Wow. Anyway, they got one part of their name right, though.
Trash.
That's right. But anyway, so we got another big national event going on. And that's the Tournament of Champions, Hobie Bass Open Series Tournament of Champions, held on the same day as Turkey Bowl, Sunday, November 10th. And my goodness,
Lord, it's the field is ridiculous, and the crazy thing is, some of the best fishermen and fisherwomen in the country are going to get last place and next to last. I mean, it's that field is so stacked. I would love to go to Wichita for the shootout that they're having. And I think they're giving away, AJ announced they're giving away 4 spots. Man, it'd be awesome to fish it, but some people are going to get their feelings hurt.
I mean, a literal who's who of kayak bass fishing. I mean, when you look at that field, there's not a name on there you don't know. If you follow this sport at all, it is crazy how stacked that field is. And that lake has, had a lot of tournaments on it this year, but it should be cooling off and should be getting good. So I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of sacks these guys are going to put up.
And just props to AJ for putting the series together and Hobie putting it together. They set out to create a real elite Tournament of Champions, and that's exactly what it's come to be.
Absolutely. I don't think anybody can disagree with that statement right there. So yeah, looking forward to following that. We'll be posting links to that on the Paddle and Fin Facebook pages Friday, so that you guys can follow those on iAngler. And it's just going to be really cool. So I'm excited about that. Well, that pretty much wraps up, what we're going to be recapping next week, what we're looking forward to. But for next week, we're going to continue this tournament director series. We're going to be bringing on another tournament director from your neck of the woods.
That's right. Steve Owens, he's one of the most respected, nicest guys in kayak fishing. He actually got second. Not only is he a tournament director for Tennessee Valley Kayak Anglers, which is that Tennessee River area, that region. He set that up with Ryan Lambert, another name you'd know. Just one of the best fishermen in the country and the nicest kind of guy you'd ever want to meet. He actually got second in the Gunnersville Hobie Open, and he'll be fishing the Tournament of Champions and be able to give us a recap of that and be able to tell us about his series that's coming up. And I'll tell you one tournament that they just had, their season just ended, and it actually starts in November at the week after he's going to be on the show. But they have their championship is an Ironman tournament, the only one I've ever heard of, and they do. Yeah, he can tell us more about it, but it's like a 3-day event where you can start on Friday afternoon and fish all the way to Sunday afternoon, and it's your best 5 fish. So I want to hear more about that tournament, something super interesting, and be able to give us a recap from Tournament of Champions and just be able to hear from a nice guy and somebody really, he's been around for a long time and super knowledgeable.
Yeah, sounds like it'll be another jam-packed show for the listeners, so that's exciting stuff. All right, guys. Well, thanks for hanging in. If you've listened all the way through this one, this is probably the longest episode we've recorded, but I think definitely some good content. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next week on The Reel Down.
Thanks for listening.
Peace.